is Crystal Bolden. I am one of the assistant professors here in the Mass Comm department, where I teach classes specifically in film and video production. As far as my background, I'm originally from Ohio, so I am a Yankee down here in the South. I studied and went to film school in Ohio, Bolden State University, which is interesting because the dean of our college is actually the man who was chair of the film and theater department in Bowling Green. Once I graduated from there in 2008, I moved to Texas. And from there, I started my production company, Cross Network. I really wanted to find a way to fuse my passion of filmmaking and then also with teaching. And so that's one of the things that a lot of people are realizing now that I had realized even back when I was in film school, which is the power of video and filmmaking to literally change people's minds, which is something that's very difficult to do.
My name is Lei Duan. I'm an assistant professor in East Asian history at Sam Houston State University. I'm working at the Department of History at the College of Humanities and Social Science. I joined the SAM in fall 2021. Before teaching at SAM, I worked as a full-time lecturer at Arizona State University. And before that, I was a research fellow at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. I did my PhD degree at Syracuse University in upstate New York. Before that, I did my master's degree at University of Massachusetts, Amherst. Originally, I came from China. I came to America in 2009 after my college study in China. I'm from North China, and at SAM, I'm teaching courses about Chinese history, Japanese history, global history, and other graduate seminars on East Asia. So I'm so excited to work at SAM to perform my teaching and research here.
I am Dr. Cassandra Gonzalez. My name is Cassie. I am an assistant professor in the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology here at SHSU. I got my PhD from the University of Colorado Boulder in ethnic studies, and I got an MA from CU Boulder as well in sociology. So my entire focus and area of expertise is in race, intersectionality in the criminal justice system and all of its various aspects. And my main core research is actually on domestic sex trafficking, specifically of Black women and girls. And I've started to expand that out to actually look at how incarceration, specifically incarceration of trafficking victims and survivors, influences how they view and frame their experiences with exploitation and their exits out of trafficking as well.
One of the things as I started making films, because I went to film school to make films, I hadn't really thought about, teaching it or really kind of researching it other than, you do your homework, turn it in, whatever. But once I started to realize, how useful and powerful it was to impact people, that was when I started to research more and researching not only just, the power of film, but looking at the different types of stories that are being told and seeing if there is a gap in the stories that we're seeing. And I think that's something that a lot of people, particularly nowadays, are starting to see, that there was a gap, particularly in, marginalized communities, communities that, don't often get their perspective on, different situations or just their stories in general told. And so you see a lot more films that have lead characters that are, people of color or women. And so I really like looking at that perspective.
I'm very fascinated in history study when I was in college. My major in college was world history. In particular, I want to look at the just transformation in the modern times. And also gradually, I'm interested in the global development from the 17th century to the present day. In my graduate school, I know that I want to be a scholar in my field. The scholar in my field, that means I want to do an independent research, innovative project that can show the human dynamics in the past. I think one particular topic in my research is about social violence and state power in modern China. And I did that research in the summer 2012 when I conducted archival research in China. I traveled to many archives and I look at the police documents. And that moment, I noticed that many criminals from the late 19th century were equipped with modern firearms. And the government also provided the gun licenses to common people. This is a very surprise to me because today China has the most severe gun control policies in the world. But from the late 19th century to 1949, the government allowed the ownership of guns if they get a license from the state. So, and then I want to say, well, sure, I should to conduct a research on the private gun ownership in modern China, and because this may tell me the dynamics between state and society in modern China. I did several years research in different universities, and now I'm working on the book based on my dissertation.
I like reading, and I don't mean that like when people say like, oh, I'm a nerd. I'm like, I genuinely love to read, but for the most part, I like actual in-depth studies of human behavior. I always have ever since I was a kid. I grew up in California. The area I grew up in was kind of stereotypical in a lot of different ways for how people think of areas where Black folk live, even though that's not where the majority of Black people live in the US. That's the stereotype that we get. I did just happen to live in one. And I noticed what will end up being called sex trafficking happening a lot around me. I didn't have that terminology. I didn't know what it was, but I just recognized that there was something going on. There was some sort of gendered pattern of violence, and it was very specific. I also noticed too that usually the folks that were around there that are charged with, protecting us and supposed to be intervening as agents of justice, usually were not doing that. So by the time we moved out, when we moved to Colorado when I was around 12 years old, I believe, I was at a dentist's office. There was a National Geographic magazine next to me, and I flipped it open, and there's a study called, and this title of it was like modern day slavery. And then I read it, and then I realized that what they were talking about, some of the stories, specifically when they focused on sex trafficked youth in the States, pretty much described everything that I had seen and witnessed growing up. But I had never seen the response that they were talking about, this response of like rescuing victims, trying to get the buyers and the traffickers and everything. It was really the complete opposite. So that for some reason imprinted into my mind. I'm not exactly sure why it did. But when I decided what I wanted to do, I decided for going to college, I decided that that's what I want to study and investigate. And then it just spiraled on from there. I've had jobs for a little while. I had interned at a rape crisis center and thought maybe I can go like the nonprofit social service route. Didn't turn out to be for me. My strengths are in reading and writing and analyzing. And so I just figured that, I want to eradicate trafficking. I want to eradicate the disparities that are happening in my community. The best way that I can contribute to that is use these skills I'm good at and then turn into this.
One of the most recent things that I've been working on, really excited about, during spring break, me and some of my film buddies and some students, I've actually already offered this opportunity to students to work on some stuff with me. But we're actually going to be working on a Black female Western film. And so I'm really excited about it because, that's something that you don't typically see. And I really enjoyed collaborating with the people that I was working with. So, I was writing it with some other people, and, we have a producer. And so it's just been a really cool thing, and we've been doing casting and stuff like that. So that's something that really gives me joy, not just because of the whole process of making a film I absolutely adore, but the story that we're telling and the impact that it can have on people, I think is something that excites me even more.
My current research focuses on social violence and state power in modern China from the late 19th century to the 1950s. As I mentioned, my dissertation focuses on the private gun ownership in modern China. During this period, many Chinese people had guns, and I argue that private gun ownership generated tremendous social and political implications. So in that research, I want to consider two questions. The first question is why and how did Chinese people acquired firearms for personal uses. The second question, I want to look at how the state regulated or controlled the private gun ownership. So in general, I want to study one, gun culture in modern China. Another is a gun control during this period. My argument is that the state regulation and control over the private gun ownership is very highly dynamic and contingent. And for sometimes the state wanted to regulate private gun ownership to show its monopoly over violence. But sometimes when China during this period suffered from political decentralization, the state allowed the private gun ownership that would benefit the state concentration into local society. This is my first book project. I will submit my book to the University of Michigan Prize. I hope it will be published in a few years. Besides that, I'm doing another project that related to my first book. We know that after 1949, the People's Republic was established. I'm looking at how a new communist state reclaimed its monopoly of violence. So that's my second project. I'm still collecting materials. I'm looking forward to traveling to some places in Asia to complete my research.
I did a dissertation that my dissertation was on lived experiences of trafficking survivors and women who self-identified as former prostitutes using their language. I made what I hope will continue to be two theoretical interventions in feminist criminology and victimology in general. So I'm hoping to get more traction with that, and I'm working on turning some of those chapters into articles. And then after that, I have a real kind of like four-pronged research approach. So my dissertation showed me the actual gaps in not only the trafficking literature as it stands, but in my own research and how I conceived it, and that it was actually very limited. So my four-pronged process involves looking at juvenile justice courts, interviewing again survivors of trafficking, and then also interviewing survivors of trafficking who are either on probation or are incarcerated, and then looking into the traffickers themselves, either men or women traffickers. Something I found in my research is that while the women were very hostile to their traffickers, there was a lot of nuance to how they viewed their traffickers, and several of them cited because they lived in neighborhoods with their traffickers for the most part. Like they knew them even after the exploitation relationship ended due to incarceration or whatever happened to cease that relationship. They still remained in that area, and sometimes they kept up with what they considered to be really tense relationships. But they described having a lot of really complicated feelings on them, mainly because a lot of them described that they knew that their traffickers had been abused themselves as children, either physically or sexually, and it impacted them growing up. They weren't making excuses, but they were definitely saying, like, we really need to start looking at how this victimization is also impacting them. So that's going to be my next phase of it.
The ultimate goal would definitely be to give my students and then the people who I work with, my actors, my crew, just the opportunity to grow in their areas of interest and passion, to give them basically an opportunity or a platform to really kind of showcase what their skill sets are, and hopefully that will lead to other future opportunities. And I think also just to bring awareness to the institution that I'm working for, so people see that this is a program where we don't just make films and put them on YouTube. Like, we actually go into real distribution, which is something that I've really been putting a lot more emphasis on recently as I've been learning more about distribution myself. Because the ultimate goal is not just to make a film. That's a really big accomplishment, but you want people to see it. So what are the ways that you can get more people to see your film, more eyeballs, more feedback? That's how you build your name for yourself. And then, you start getting those phone calls or emails from executives at bigger studios and stuff like that. They want to, have you work on a project that they have or whatever the case may be. So it's really just to kind of help other people develop their platform. And then, as I was saying before, just to really try to tell stories that we either haven't heard before or from a perspective that we don't generally see.
My first goal right now is to complete my book manuscript. I've been writing for years to revise my dissertation and to add more chapters to my manuscript. I'm almost finished the draft, and I will submit my manuscript to the University of Michigan Prize. Another goal is to start my research on a new project. As I mentioned, I'm looking at the post-1949, how the Chinese government controlled violence. In particular, I want to study the dynamics between state and society after 1949. I have already received several research grants to support my research on my second topic. I don't know when the international travel will recover. Well, if possible, I can conduct research in China and in Hong Kong next year or future when I have the chance to go back to Asia. And also, I was invited by a publisher to write a book about talking about the private gun ownership in world history. This is not a research project, but a book for a general audience, for the undergraduate students. So I'm still working on that. I hope I can secure a book contract with the Oxford University Prize. So that book is a more global and a comparative project to look at human dynamics in modern times.
Really difficult to get to this population, which is why there's so few research on it, specifically looking at with Black women and girls. Like, I mean, R. Kelly was just found guilty in a federal court for sex trafficking of all these different Black boys, girls, women, and men. There was he had a whole slew of victims. And even with something like that, there's still not a whole lot of talk on like these racial, class, and every other kind of dimensions that we have in there. There's some great works out there. So I'm not going to say like the entire field is just bad with it. There's a lot of really good, like critical work that's interrogating all these, but I'm trying to just do my part with contributing to that part. I would love if my field of research would be considered historical at some point. Just a complete eradication, hopefully, of exploitation, and in general, as cliched as it sounds and everything, like I just want to dismantle all those systems of oppression, just take them down, let them burn on a fire somewhere.
Come and collaborate with me. Just really kind of reaching out and tapping into the treasure trove of resources that is here, amongst the faculty. That's really just what I would like to tell them is like, let's collaborate. Like what are the things that you specialize in? How can we, work together on, a project or a common goal? Because I feel like in many institutions, not even just higher education, even when I was teaching high school, a lot of times people didn't collaborate as much as they really could have. And so, opportunities to, enhance the classroom or just enhance, just the overall educational experience are missed because, we never knew that this person knew how to act or this person knows how to do special effects or whatever the case may be. And so those are things that you're trying to find elsewhere when it's right there in front of you. So just, open to collaboration and definitely contact me, my fellow faculty.
I have been working at Sam Houston State for 8 weeks. It's a great experience. I really enjoy working here and working with my students, my colleagues, and I would say everyone in my department are highly supportive. They would like to offer any help for a new faculty member. So I look forward to pursuing more collaborations with other faculty members at SAM. I hope I can apply my knowledge, my expertise to the community. I look forward to developing more Asia-related courses. Right, today, East Asia is one of the most important regions in the world. And to understand some contemporary issues in East Asia, we have to look at its past. And also, I think the world has become increasingly interconnected. As an educator, I have this responsibility to equip my students with global awareness. And I hope that I can teach the courses on Asia could help students understand the contemporary world more comprehensively and critically. And this way, I would like to collaborate with my colleagues at the Department of History. We have a group of great scholars and educators in the field. So I would like to contribute my expertise and also to collaborate with others.
I guess for the ones that I've met already, thank you, because they've all been incredibly supportive. Because like I said, I've had plenty of new jobs, and I've never had this many people take a genuine interest in my well-being to see how I'm adjusting to anything. That was very, very unusual experience for me, and I really am very appreciative of that. I feel really welcomed, and it's a nice camaraderie feeling that I have. And then, yeah, come talk to me at some point about just anything. I like talking to people. Cautiously, because we're still in the pandemic, but I will meet in person if y'all want. But yeah, thank you all, and just reach out if you ever want to chat, because I like talking. I'm friendly.